Hi, welcome back to What to Write When You Don't Know What to Write and You Don't Think You're a Writer, Part 2. So, how did it go yesterday? Did you write one thing in your notebook? Your plot and your setting or your characters or your theme? Did you write one thing in one of those categories? Have you done it again today yet? You still have time if you haven't. But this is one of those things where one little step, every step you want to celebrate that victory, because the thing about writing, it can be this overwhelming task. And you read a book and you're like, how did someone do that? And the thing is, they did it in many, many, many steps, many layers coming back again and again. And the only way to get going is to just start that one first step, because once you've taken that first step, the second step is possible. And so definitely want to celebrate. And so one thing internal motivation is awesome. Like, we need that, but external motivation definitely helps. I use a writing software called Scrivener, and I like it for a variety of reasons. One of which is that when I hit my target word count for the day, it dings. And that's a wonderful feeling. And but there's other ways, like food-based things. Like if you had a chocolate chip per se for every thing that you wrote in your notebook. Like, let's say you fill each page with 20 things by the end of 2 months. 80 chocolate chips over the course of 2 months is an important price to pay for the fact that you have the materials to start writing. So consider how you want to reward yourself. Stickers on a chart is also a fabulous way. You can't understate the importance of having a bit of motivation for this kind of thing, especially if you can't really see where it's heading yet. You just got to trust in the process, right? So I want to talk to you about what happened for me after I finished filling up my 4 pages of brainstorming. So I had my pages up for theme, and I had my pages for characters and for setting and for plot. It had been 2 months. I had filled them up, and I looked at them and I thought, I am not ready to write yet. It's not there. I don't know the story well enough. So that's when I went back to the character page, because for me, character is pretty important as a starting point. And so this is when I actually added all this color coding. I decided to circle the stuff that I definitely want to keep, and I sort of circled it in different colors based on what character I felt like I was attaching different characteristics to so that you could create one character out of that, and then this would be another character over here maybe, and brainstorming different things. And I looked at that, and it's pretty messy. And I thought, okay, what do I need? And so I realized I really needed to give each character the space just to brainstorm about them. So in this process, I figured out, okay, what are the main characters? And then I got to, I started making a character page for each of them. And so I decided that Agnes and Mo were going to be the main characters, and it was going to be really based on their friendship, the story. And so I have a page for them, and I have a page for different characters, other key characters in the book. And I just kind of brainstormed. I got down what I already knew based on my original brainstorming, and then I gave myself space to just keep going and add other ideas. And, when I look back at these, some of these things have stayed and some of them haven't, but it was helping me get to know the characters a bit more. So then I thought I'd be ready, but I got to the end of those pages and I thought, I am not ready to start writing. Remember, I need to sneak up on this story, right? Sneak up from behind. So then I realized, okay, the friendship is at the center of this story. So I need to understand that friendship better. So I used to be a middle school teacher, and I created a Venn diagram. Let's see if I can hold it. A Venn diagram showing, comparing the different characters, those 2 characters, Agnes and Mo, both at home and at school. And so, like, what do they have in common? What are sort of the things that they like to do together? What are some of the tensions between them? And this was a key piece. I thought, ooh, I can start to see that it's starting to come alive. And And the other thing I also did was I did have a couple ideas for possible beginnings as I was brainstorming, and so I made a spot for them. I was not committing to anything, but I was like, okay, here are some possible ways you could start. And so just getting stuff down on paper without any pressure for it to be good or right or something that you ever keep, it keeps the mind going in a very powerful way. And so then you can come back later and be like, oh, now that I've thought about this more, well, what one of these does work better than the other? But I had them on paper so my brain could come back. Like a lot of the brainstorming on paper, the benefit is that you give your mind the time to really explore. And part of the getting into a story, it's kind of like you are dropping yourself into a paper bag and you keep finding more and more of the paper bag as you go down further. And you really want to get to the point that you're fully immersed, like your legs are up in the air and you're fully in the paper bag. But the only way you can do that is a little bit at a time. And if you have it on paper, you can sort of come back, you can let your mind rest, you can let your mind sort of consider in the back, like have things going on in the back of your mind, which is a powerful way to do stuff, and then come back to it later. Like this morning, I woke up at 4 after a not great anxiety dream, and I suddenly had this idea for one conversation that I've been working on in my head for months, in one of my works in progress. And it's something where every time I have an idea for it, I come and I write it down, and then I'm still sort of circling around, but it means that each time I write, I'm getting closer. I'm sort of recording my progress getting closer. So you want to get it down on paper because then it frees your brain up to do other stuff, like think about the next steps. And so I did those Venn diagrams, and that was very good, but I still wasn't quite ready. And then I realized what I really needed to do, which is something I do when I'm stuck in the middle of writing a project. If I don't know what happens next, or if I'm coming up against a wall, the main thing, like you think, okay, this is this big unknown. You got to break it down into more manageable parts. And so the perfect vehicle for that is to ask questions. Because when you're asking a question, you are chunking of what. So, for example, I decided that these are going to be the questions. I needed a page for questions, and so I have like time period. Is it going to be the full school year? What's the plot involving Sadie? That's one of the secondary characters. What's the plot involving this other secondary character? I was really just getting questions down so that I could be mulling them over in my brain and then jotting down answers. Sometimes you write the question and suddenly you're like, oh, maybe it's this. Maybe I have an answer to that. And so that started me going. And then it was like, okay, I think I'm ready. I can picture between all this writing in all these different places. I would go back and forth between these things. And it's like you're finding this in the paper bag, right? You have to find the story. And so you got to dig deep enough. And I think about it in terms of, it's like focusing. And I've started doing this meditation class online or through an app. And one of to help with, anxiety and stuff like that. And one of the things that they focus on a lot is the power of focusing. Like if you zero in your attention into one narrow spot, you will discover things about that narrow place that you never thought of before. So it's kind of like for the story, like you're looking down at the grass and you're like, I don't see any story here. There's no activity. I'm just standing on grass. But then you get down on your belly so that you're flat on the ground and you just lie there staring at the grass at ant level, finally. And then you start to see all the buggies that are crossing and going on their highways and bringing stuff and running away from things and running towards things. And suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, there was so much going on here. I just had to get close enough and stay still long enough that I could see it. And so a lot of this is giving yourself the time to do that so that you don't forget what it was because it's on the page. Okay, so I got to that point where I was like, okay, I can see it. And so actually this is this is a year ago. I was in Georgia doing school visits, and I was so excited. I was like, finally gonna start drafting. It had been 2.5 months, so close enough. And I opened my computer, and my computer had just broken. I was like, no, I'm finally ready. And so I reached out to some of my writer friends, and they're like, you could do it on paper. And I thought, right. So I started writing, and I had a working title. Always use working titles. The title is the hardest part. It's like the last thing to make a decision about. So just put some random working title. So I have Chapter 1, Declarations of a Dead Possum. And I wrote 2 pages. And, there's arrows, there's stuff crossed out, and it's one of those things I just had to get it down. And my goal was to write 2 pages a day. So there's another 2 pages. That was the next day. And so you do 2 pages a day, and you will have a full middle grade length story novel in 4 months. And so it's one of those things where, obviously you don't have to write a book that's that long, but it's just a matter of putting one foot in front of the other. And so one of the things I want you to really do is to celebrate every victory. Every time you achieve something that you're like, I thought I wasn't going to be able to do that, and you did it, celebrate. And the other thing is, don't expect it to be good. Like this, if I look at this now, none of this is in the current draft of this manuscript. It's all gotten changed, but it had to exist for me to figure out how to change it. There's 2 really good analogies that I like to draw on about drafting. One is that you're telling yourself the story in the first draft. That's you telling yourself the story. And after that, you're trying to figure out how to tell it to anyone else. So it doesn't matter what goes down on the page. It's just for you to figure out what the story is. And so the other one is by, I think Shannon Hale said this one, is that the first draft, you're putting the sand into the sandbox. And then after that, you're figuring out how to actually build the sandcastles. You got to get the sand in there to start with. Okay, so now I think the other thing I wanted to share with you is that, so you're like, okay, it's not supposed to be good. Like, does it really matter what I put down? And yes, I think the metric you should be using to figure out, is this something I should write down? Honestly, write down anything that comes to your brain, but you want it to be you. You want to be putting yourself on the page. You don't want to be putting what someone else wants to hear. You don't want to be putting what you think someone else would write. You want to be putting what you want to write. Like, that's the most important thing. Tapping into that inner voice of yours. And I want to tell you a story from when I was in 4th grade. Writing was a huge part of our curriculum, and it was called Writing as a Process, and we had these long drafts, lots of revising, and it was, honestly, I think now it has really helped me. But at the moment, I had started the story. It was going to be a mystery. There was a haunted house, and basically the 2 characters were very similar to these 2 girls that were pretty popular in my class. I was not popular at all. 4th grade was the first time anyone was paying attention to that. So I was very aware that I was not in that world, and I was writing a story that, now that I look back, I was writing the story that I thought they would like. And I had 3 lines, that they'd seen a haunted house. I don't know what else. It was boring. And I was stuck for weeks. It was an assignment. I had to write more. I had to write the story, and I had nothing. I was so just completely stuck. And I thought, okay, I am, a bad writer. I'm not a writer. I have no imagination. I am not creative. And there's all these things that were clearly dominating everything. But part of it was that this is not me. And I didn't realize that. And then the assignment was due the next day. And I'm not sure exactly what made me stop, but I decided I just need to write something completely different. And out of nowhere, I wrote this completely different story that was very me, and I'm going to read it to you, because I just found it in my attic. The Case of the Double Daring Dragon. The Case of the Double Daring Dragon by the great Anne Bedachek. That was my maiden name. All right. So this is what happens when you're like, I'm just going to write for myself, right? Hi, my name is Emphysema Dandruff. I am a normal alien. My mother's name is Mrs. and my father's name is Mr. Here I am in our alien auto and arriving at the Planet Hall for the 70th meeting about the Double Daring Dragon. The Double Daring Dragon is a Double Daring Dragon, if you didn't know what a Double Daring Dragon is. Wait, hold on, I'll show you the picture. Oh, pages from 80s. The Double Daring Dragon is always hungry. The only food it can eat is aliens. The amount of alien ammunition is running low. The amount of aliens is running low too. Every time we go to a meeting, they say the same thing over and over again. I know it by wires. Heart. They say, what we need to do is to kill it. They are afraid to say Double Daring Dragon. What do you think we should do? Then we sit there thinking for 2 hours. Oh, wait. Here's my dragon. I'd read My Father's Dragon and done a book report on that, so I had lots of practice drawing dragons. So we think about it for 2 hours. After that, we usually go home unless they make us stay an extra hour to think. This time they made us stay the extra hour. The next day, we went purple spinach picking, my favorite dish. We were walking through the orange spinach patch, which was right next to the purple spinach patch. Yum, yum. When we heard a big, big thump. The dragon had stepped in his sleep onto our planet Blueberry. That's strange, Ms., my mom's friend, said. He normally comes during the night. My dad said he must be going to that night school on evening. Then we heard thump. Again. It's getting closer, my mom said. Run for your electricity, I yelled. We ran, we fled, we raced, we trotted, we jogged, we galloped, we bolted away from the spinach picking. When we got home, we went straight to the big window. It was very exciting. We were about to see what the amazing and ancient alien alligator egg does to the Double Daring Dragon. We had gotten some of the parts from the planet Earth. This is the 56th time we have tried to kill it. They were getting closer. Our machine shut off, there was a big crash, our house collapsed, and the Double Daring Dragon was dead. So that was not what those 2 popular girls in my class were going to write. I was like, I'm going as weird as I am, and I'm putting it on the page. And it was so fun. I mean, look at that title page. I was like, by the great Anne Benedek. There, you get some confidence when you're like, I am me, and me is cool, even if it's weird, super weird. And so, I really encourage you, don't worry about if it's good, but make sure that it's you. Put you on the page. And if you're like, I don't know if this is me, put it on the page, and then you can get rid of it later. So, one last thing, I want to answer a question that came in from yesterday. It's a really good question. It's about if you're writing stories and you get bogged down by the feeling of feeling like you have to tell every single detail, so much so that it really slows the story down. What advice do you have to give a writer to help them move their story along? This is a great question. And I think the first answer, though, is that first draft, you want to write whatever details you want down, right? Because you're telling yourself the story. So whatever details help you understand the story, put them down. I am someone who I don't have a ton of details. I'm sort of more like looking at headlights that shine the way for a little bit forward. So I don't work with a ton of details like that, but if it works for you, go for it. And then later, then it's about figuring out how to tell it to someone else. So that's when it is about pulling back. And in some ways, I think I write first person, so it's very much you are in that main character's head, and they do not mention anything, they do not think about anything that is not important to them and noticed by them as real human people with the cares that they have as that character. And so that is my main way of sort of seeing details, to make sure that that main character would care about it to say it. But even if you're in third person, or even if you're sort of coming from a higher perspective and it's a more omniscient narrator where the narrator is seeing many more things than the main characters are seeing, you still want to make sure that your details work double duty for you, that you can defend every detail as, as important, as serving a purpose. And you can really trust the reader to create images in their mind, even without all the details. So hold on. I will actually I'll read the first paragraph of the benefits of being an octopus. And I'm not going to describe Zoe, the main character, physically at all. Actually, ever in the book. I never describe what she looks like in the book because her looks for her are not important. They never are part of what she's thinking about. And that has not been a problem in terms of people understanding her as a character, even though there's no physical details. So I just want to read this paragraph, and then we'll look at those details that were included and why they were included. I settle onto the couch with the chocolate pudding I saved from Friday's school lunch. This silence is amazing. Well, it's not complete silence. Hector is spinning the whirring dragon on his baby seat while he eats Cheerios, but it's pretty close. I savor a spoonful of pudding. How long do I have before Bryce and Aurora burst out of our bedroom arguing about something? When I left them in there, Aurora was pretending to be Bryce's cat, and he was pretending to feed her milk, but that can't last. I mean, they're 4 and 3. That's not how it works. I take another bite with my eye on the bedroom door, but it stays closed. This never happens. All right, so I never describe what Zoe looks like. I don't really describe the room around her so much, but what we can figure out from this is, we can figure out that chocolate pudding is so special to her that she's saving it from Friday's school lunch, that silence is special to her, that she cares about her siblings and that she's responsible for them, and that she never has time by herself. We also get a sense of how old her siblings are to give it the larger picture of what being responsible for them means. So there are details in here, but there's not more details than we need to get a general sense of what's going on. And obviously, then it keeps going and the other details come up in the story, but you want to make sure that each of those details eventually is going to work for you. But that's only when you're in the revising stage. And so if you are all interested in doing a revision mini-series, let me know, because that's a completely different topic. But for now, I would say write all the details you want, because you're telling yourself the story. And yeah, because that's the main goal of the first draft. Just start there. Okay, well, if you have other questions, let me know. And write one more thing today. And then tomorrow, we'll have our last episode in this, and I'm excited about it. All right, take care.